Amero did not run away.
She did not run away.
Finding Kim Amero, Chapter 5, It Can't End Here. Whether you're listening to this on the podcast or watching this on the documentary, as always, I appreciate you joining me on this journey. First and foremost, I have to say that the outpouring of messages, of encouragement, of love, of thanks has been incredible. I've had a lot of messages that have given me alternative theories, a lot of alternative theories about Michael Wayne McGray. Maybe he picked her up hitchhiking. Maybe he was in on it with the campground owner. There was a lot of information that was sent to me about Michael Wayne McGray. Every theory that we've gotten so far, we've tried to dig into and either yay it or nay it. Nothing that we're going to mention here on the documentary today. But the outpouring has been incredible. And with all the tips and all the information that I've received, it's really helped me come to my own conclusion regarding the disappearance of Kim Amero. And with the help of some former co-workers of Randy, some former co-workers of a certain property owner, and just some information in general that I've gotten from some anonymous tipsters, I've really been able to narrow down this documentary to one surviving theory. But before we get to that, let's put this Michael Wayne McGray thing to bed once and for all. Many people have sent me ideas, like I said, about Michael Wayne McGray, but one lovely lady and a lifer on the peninsula made me wipe the idea of Michael Wayne McGray completely off the table. So he's off the table, and I'm going to explain to you why, because I believe this lady and I believe this lifer on the peninsula, and so I'm going to go forward with this idea of what happened on that campground in 2009 and why the police dug. See, it turns out that in 2008, a convicted killer named Jason Rogerson was living in a grow-up in Oshawa, Ontario. However, he's from St. John, New Brunswick. One evening, he had an altercation with a female. She died, and he decided to pour bleach on her and bury her in the backyard. On trial, he represented himself, pleaded self-defense, and somehow the jury bought it. If you watch or look up Jason Rogerson and look at the case, you will find it hard to believe that he got away with murder, but he did. According to DurhamRegion.com, the events happened like this. I'll read it to you. Testifying in his own defense, Rogerson said he and Young met for the first time in a Ritson Road pub and returned to his house on Bloor Street East, where he lived rent-free to provide cover for a marijuana grow-up run by a friend. This, in the picture that you see here, is the woman that he met. He said the two had consensual sex, but that Young flew into a rage after he made a lewd remark. He said that Young stabbed him several times with a knife he kept in his bedroom to clean his pot pipe. If you look at the wounds again, look up the wounds he got. They're light grazes. They are not stabs at all whatsoever. He described a desperate struggle that ended when he pinned the young woman on the floor and pressed his forearm over her mouth and nose. Rogerson, who said he was very drunk and high on ecstasy that night, testified he passed out and only realized Young was dead when he awoke around noon the following day. He admitted he buried the young woman in a shallow grave in his backyard and used bleach in an attempt to get rid of blood spatter in his bedroom, but insisted he did so at the instruction of his friend, who warned him gangsters who had bankrolled the grow-up would be very angry about this incident. Rogerson's story was challenged vigorously by prosecutor Mike Newell, who said evidence including the numerous injuries suffered by, Amber Young, not Amanda Young, Rogerson's relatively superficial injuries, and his efforts to conceal the killing contradicted his claim of self-defense. Now, you're probably wondering what all this has to do with Michael Wayne McGray. Nothing. It has nothing to do with Michael Wayne McGray. But it does have something to do with that dig on Kingston Peninsula in 2009. Okay? So a lot of people have been sending me messages saying that perhaps Michael Wayne McGray was friends with the campground owner, or was in on it with the campground owner, or was in on it with Randy, and maybe they buried her in Kingston Peninsula. So Mr. Rogerson was very good friends at one time with the family that owned the campground. No idea if they still do. I'm not trying to diss this campground at all. And apparently he had a falling out with this family, and it came to light that the police dug up the campground based on information that Rogerson provided the police regarding a deceased prostitute. He claimed that there was drugs dealt out of that campground, and as I said, a prostitute buried there. He was probably trying to give the police some information to lessen the harshness on him. Who knew he'd get away with murdering Amber Young, but he did. So I have it on very good authority that that is why the police dug up those grounds in 2009. I've spoken to people who work close to this campground. I've spoken to people who camp at this campground on a regular basis. And I've spoken to some Peninsula lifers, like I said, and the lovely lady who initiated this tip with me, I believe is correct. I believe that's what happened. So I stayed at that campground, actually, and I don't want this to shape your view of this campground at all. I mean, they're an operating campground. They have paddle boats for rent. They have canoes to rent. They have things to do. I stayed there when I first moved to this province, and other than a pretty drunk employee who was renting out the cabin next to us for sex, and a porta potty full of bees that caused us to get quite stung, it was an uneventful weekend. So, shortly after receiving this information, I spoke to a couple of cowboys who were able to verify the validity of Dylan's statements as well. Dylan, as you know, is the grandson of Randy, who is a person of interest in this documentary. They knew about the smashed computer. If I haven't mentioned the smashed computer, I know that Dylan did on the last episode, saying that he threw it in a lake, went and retrieved it and smashed it because he was afraid the police were going to find the letters that he was writing. But these cowboys that I spoke to really were able to tell me what I already knew, that Jane and Dylan's facts are just that, facts. So anyways, these cowboys gave me the name of a gentleman on the island who is rumored to know everything about the peninsula happenings. I went to see him and he told me two notable things of interest. One, he said that the police did some digging around the time of a serial killer, Noel Winters, which is another story altogether. But Noel lived on the peninsula and buried some bodies in his backyard and took his own life in 1983. This lifer remembered Noel's backyard being dug up. The second thing this gentleman told me is that the next dig that he remembers happening on the peninsula was in 2009 at that campground. He told me that they were looking for a dead prostitute. When I asked him how he knew, he told me that his buddy, one of the police officers that were involved in the dig, told him so. And I believe him. So, that 2009 dig, I believe, had nothing to do with Kim, and I believe that it had nothing to do with Michael Wayne McGray. So that puts both of those ideas to bed, I believe. Okay, so last episode we left off with Jane and Dylan and the talk of this property in Upham. The property location was pinpointed on the CD that Randy made, and I've explained the digging and the hunts that took place afterwards. I wanted to see the property in Upperton. That's what my GPS. That's where my GPS puts this property, in Upperton, New Brunswick. And I've got some strange pictures to show you about this property. But first, I want to talk about how that property feels. I've made 4 trips to that property in total. First, it was impossible to find if you don't have help. If you don't know that that property's there, you're never going to find it. If it's late and you have a woman in the car, whether willingly or unwillingly, and you're driving around roads, you're not going to pull into this property. It isn't a driveway. It isn't a road. It is just run over grass off the side of the road in a clearing between 2 trees. You can't see that the property opens up into an expanse of space from the road. It looks like someone did a U-turn one day. They just pulled in and pulled back out. That's what the beginnings of this driveway looks like. So there's no way you're going to find this property by accident. So it's not as if Randy was driving around the roads and went, hey, I'll say she was here. I don't think that happened. He would have had to have known that property. For sure. So after 2 failed tries of trying to find this property, and it's way, way, way out there, I finally found it. And the second I got out of my car, I had 2 thoughts. I thought, this is the most gorgeous piece of property I've ever seen with the prettiest view. And I also thought, I feel so unwelcome. I feel like somebody's watching me. I know it's bizarre. There's no conspiracy theories about it. That's just how I felt. And I felt very uneasy, like I didn't want to be there very long. Each person that accompanied me made a similar remark without me prompting them. Every time I went up there, for instance, my husband, one of the remarks he made, without me prompting him, he said, we got to get out of here. This doesn't feel right. Something feels wrong here. Another person that I brought up there with a metal detector to kind of have a look around said to me, when they got out of the vehicle, I don't feel comfortable being here. I feel super uncomfortable. I said, maybe it's just because you know what you think is here, or maybe you think you know what's on this property. And this person said, no, from the second we pulled in this driveway, I don't really want to be here. And actually, we didn't even get to use the metal detector. They wanted to be gone so fast. The picture you're looking at right now is the gorgeous view and the feeling of being truly alone in nature. The black circle you see here is my car. Literally, I just covered up my car. Literally, no one around for miles. And here there isn't even the sound of birds. There's no sounds of animals rustling, just nothingness. But it's beautiful nothingness. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you can see trees for miles. You are up on a peak, and when you look out, all you see is nature. You do not see another house, another cabin, another human being, a road. You see nothing but nature. That's the only view there is from this property, and it's stunning. The second thing you see when you pull up to this property is this trailer here. After doing some investigating, we've discovered that this trailer actually belongs to a former police officer whose name I'm going to leave out of respect, which I find is a little strange, but because the property isn't owned by this police officer. I'm not going to mention the surname of the property owner in this documentary because I have a story to tell later that is just speculation. But the last time that the plates on this trailer were renewed was coincidentally the same year that they came to this property looking for Kim. The trailer, on a side note, is completely empty. You can see in the picture that the windows are actually plastic. So when we looked into the plastic, we saw nothing. It's completely empty. It's not furnished. Now, I don't know if I've explained this properly, but this property that you're looking at right now is the property where the burnt out foundations are. Randy said in the letter that there was a cellar. It was a property with a cellar, that you could still see the chimney of this property. And you could see the brass bed that she was kept in. And that is all true to the fact that there is a burnt out foundation. You can still see the chimney and you can still see the brass bed. So that's where apparently she was held and killed. Now, he does claim that he dragged her to another location to bury her because it was too close to the road to bury her where she was killed. Apparently his psychic, seeings were that they would bring her upstairs to spend, torture time or just time with her and then put her back down to the basement. As the story goes, she escaped, was hit in the back of the head, and then dragged to this, second location to be buried. I did visit the second location after a lot of muddy and muddy memories and stuff. I know that I've been at the second location. This is where Hampton was dug. I have verified that. And there was where she was buried, there was a burnt out foundation there, but the excavator actually covered it up. So it's no longer there. It's just like a small pile of rocks now. So in saying that, this property that you're looking at is apparently where she was held, not buried. Now, the theory that they dragged her to this second location, it seems a bit strange to me because it's a far distance. It's a far distance to drag somebody just to bury them. If you're going to, shovel out a hole, there's, 50 places along the trail that you could have done so. You didn't have to go this far. So I don't know if I buy that theory that she's buried at the second piece of land. But again, I don't know Randy's motivations. I don't know if he's telling the truth, or I don't know if he's trying to bring heat away from him. I don't know if he's trying to throw heat on someone else. So I'm not sure. But that is his claim. I do have a picture of the pile of rocks to show you as well. The outhouse you see in this picture is actually newer. It definitely has not been there since the 80s. And the National Geographics that I found in the washroom suggest that this outhouse has been used recently. But by who? That's what I don't get. Who is here? Like in this outhouse, there was a brand new flashlight. There was new rolls of toilet paper. There's a new Bud Light cooler. I traced it back that it was given out, I believe, last year by Bud. It was a backpack cooler. And like I said, the Nat Geos are recent Nat Geos. I don't know who's at this property. I don't know. If you look at this tree, who did this to this tree? Look at these photos. Bicycle chains and wire after wire of just random stuff hanging from the tree. And you got to think, I have to tell you, there's hundreds of items hanging from this tree. So someone had to take the time to turn the wire and to make everything hangable. There's a teddy bear that's, all wired up to the tree. There's a snake. There's a skeleton. There's a record. It's everywhere. There is just a bunch of things attached to this tree with no rhyme or reason. Keychains, all kinds of things. There are a bunch of these bottles filled with mystery goo hanging from this tree. And for what? What's the mystery goo? Why would you hang mystery goo from a tree? This tree completely baffles me on this property. And I know I'm getting off of the topic of Kim Amero here, but it just adds to the mystery to me because this tree is so strange. The box that you see in this picture had Harry Potter coins, so you know it hasn't been there super long, or definitely not since the 80s, and it had a bunch of pennies in it. But why? Like, what is the deal with this tree? There's a turtle soap dish and a strange tile in this photo. And I just wonder who would take the time, and why would someone have the time to do this to this tree? If the property is abandoned like it's rumored, and this tree didn't have these items on it when the Ameros and Jane were here in 2010, it didn't. What the heck's going on? And at the bottom of the tree, as if perfectly placed, there's more stuff. Not an ounce of anything to see for miles, but this mound of things. This pair of girls' shoes that look like they once hung there and have fallen have really puzzled me. Like, where did they come from and why? Now, before you think it, I have verified that these are not Kim Amero's shoes. Okay, enough about this tree, I guess. But I have to tell you, for those listening to the podcast, it's the most random of items hanging from this tree. And just the thought that someone took the care to do this is really baffling. Now, I did have a metal detector group go up there, and they believe that a lot of those items, most of those items, were dug up by a metal detector. They were, a lot of them obviously were metal, but because they all look like they've been buried before, or most of the items look like that they've, had a rough season. So the metal detecting club that did end up going up there, decided that they think those items, or most of those items, obviously not the record and the teddy bear, but most of those items were metal detected, and dug up and hung on this tree. Very strange. Very strange. That's a lot of digging, by the way, for all of those items, if that's true. If you look closely, you'll see the hole that was dug with this random shovel on the bottom lower right of this photo. You can also see the mound of dirt behind the tree that's holding up the shovel. So for those of you who are listening to the podcast, it's a shovel against a tree. To the right is a hole. To the back is the dirt from the hole. This shovel just wasn't laying about either. I didn't stand it up for the picture. You had to travel down this path that wasn't really a path. And I say it's a semi-path because it's not really cleared. And then all of a sudden, boom, you can go no further because of the pool that this hole has created. So rain has gotten into this hole and pooled it. And then the shovel up against the tree. And I ask, again, who put this shovel here if this property is abandoned, and what are they digging, and what are they digging up here for? Did they, I don't know. Did they use the shovel to dig up all the metal detected items? Could be. But again, why? Why are you up on this particular property with a metal detector, finding all of these items and then taking your time to hang them from a tree? Now, if you're thinking that the property owners did it, I will tell you what I have learned, but keep in mind that everything I have learned is hearsay at this point. A property owner in 2010 was overheard gabbing at work that he had burned down the old abandoned farmhouse and cabin on the property by accident while clearing some brush. But almost in the same breath, the same property owner told a coworker that Randy brought heat to the property and that he was headed up there to put the brakes on the digging. And that is true. I verified that with Ed and his lovely wife. And that property in particular, the property owner said no, said he was going to sue them, said stay the hell off my property, say it's private property, no trespassing. So that kind of verifies that tipster telling me that the coworker telling me that the property owner said that at work, because that actually did happen. They were allowed to dig, however, at the second location where they did end up digging and unfortunately finding nothing, as you and I both know. So keep in mind, though, this is secondhand information. I heard this from a coworker, and the owner of the property at the time, the person who put the stop to the digging, has passed away, and their family doesn't really want to comment on this documentary at all, or comment on the burnt out property. But so that's where I'm at with that. The owner of this property didn't do the metal detecting and didn't hang those items from the tree. That I do know. Here are remains of the cabin or the farmhouse that had the brass bed in it, that had the chimney in it. The chimneys will be the next slide. We actually found 3 burnt out locations on this property, most of which we couldn't get a picture of because it was so overgrown and we were up to our necks in overgrowth. So the pictures weren't really coming out. But in the top right of this picture, you can see the burnt out foundation. This hole is actually what appears to be the basement, as Randy described, which leads me to believe that it is the farmhouse. I'm not sure. In this picture here, the next picture, you'll see crumblings of the foundation as well. I don't know what all this stuff is that's in this hole. I don't know who put it there over time, but this is the burnt out foundation. On your left there, you can see the basement wall. Now, you remember me saying that I, as well as the company I keep, felt like we were being watched and that the outhouse had been used lately? Check this out. Check out this picture. From the angle that this was taken, this encampment nestled behind the trailer in the woods is actually almost impossible to see. We actually had to take a lot of the camouflage off. Someone has been living here recently, but as you can see from these photos, their bedroom has caved in. For those listening to the podcast, this is a homemade encampment made with blankets and sleeping bags and a tin roof, and it had trees and brush all over it. And the first two times I was up there, I didn't even notice it, didn't even see it, and I walked right by it. So this thing was expertly built for sure, topped with a cooking and heating stove that I'm guessing weighs hundreds and hundreds of pounds. I couldn't move it. There's a tin roof there to keep the chimney safe. There's camouflaging. Like, someone took their time to come and live here. Now, you may think it's a hunting blind, which is exactly what I thought initially, but there are 0 ways to get your four-wheeler to this location. And how the heck and why would you lug this intensely heavy wood stove, cook stove in here for 14 days of use, really, or 21 days, depending on what you're hunting, right? It made no sense that someone would go through all of this. And why the bed? I mean, you don't generally sleep unless you're in a cabin. It's cold that time of year, but maybe that, makes sense for the wood stove. I don't know. It just didn't scream hunting blind to me at all. There was no bullets around either, but there were tubs like the one you see here in this picture, full of new food, unopened pasta and sauces, new peanut butters, utensils. It appears to me that someone either left in a hurry or with intentions of returning and have just never come back, because the age of the bedroom caving in and the age of those things, to me, look like they were at least a year or two old, or maybe a year old. And obviously no one's staying there since the cave-in. So there were so many things on this encampment or in this encampment that you would want to take with you. It's strange to me. So I think either the person left with intentions of returning and has never returned, or left abruptly because of the things that were left behind in this encampment. There's a lot of heavy tools behind, expensive tools like this one, a lot of clothing for all seasons, shoes, personal items, an expensive solar radio, deodorant, toothpaste, cans of boxes and nails and screws, a saw, like this really super heavy, very expensive vise. It just furthers the mystery shrouding around this property. And maybe I'm just paranoid and it is just a really expensively well-built hunting blind. I don't know. Now, this locale is apparently where she has died, then buried elsewhere. So I'm not going to go digging on this property. I mean, where the letter pointed them to dig, they feel that they've already dug. However, I do believe that Ed and his sister and maybe Ed's wife did find another location that they're hoping to dig at. I do believe that's the case. I don't want to say for sure, but I got to tell you, this property in particular really gives everyone the heebie-jeebies. It really does. It just makes you feel icky. It's strange. And maybe it's the subconscious thought of what you know happened here or what you think happened here, right? But I just found this encampment really strange. Now, while we were up there, a gentleman stopped in and told us that right around the time Kim went missing, he happened upon some grease monkeys, some backyard mechanic-y types that he knew, and they had a car up on some rocks, and they had burnt it. They were burning it. They said the transmission blew out. Now, here's what struck the gentleman funny about that. He said that the car was in mint condition, an oldie but a goodie, were his words. He said it was worth a lot, and that these gentlemen easily had the knowledge to drop a tranny into it easily and cheaply. He said that he always wondered if that car had something to do with Kim's disappearance. Said he heard about Kim missing on the radio. Now, we can't find any verification that Kim's disappearance was actually on the radio. If you remember, or when she did first disappear, they thought she had just ran away. So that struck me as odd. I'm still digging for proof on that, because that's what he told me. And immediately when he said that, I thought, really? She was on the radio? I've never heard that before. So when I asked if I could repeat his story, he said no names, no tying nothing to me. And so here I am. It's not a confidential tip, because I can't verify the story without using the names that he gave me. But there's a strange fact about this cat, too. When we mentioned the burning of the brush in the old farmhouse, he shut right up. And when we mentioned Randy, there was almost this look of recognition in his eyes. And when we started talking about both of those items, he just shut up and had to go. Very strange. But I mean, this burning car is like a whole other avenue, to go digging into. So there's not a lot we can do, because we have to keep his stuff confidential. So, dear audience, to date, We are no further ahead than when we started. I promise not to give you opinions, just facts, and I've repeatedly offered Randy the opportunity to tell his side of the story, and he is choosing not to at this time. Emails, snail mail, banging on his door till he kicks us off the property. A lot has happened, but he doesn't want to talk to us. We've tried to get into contact with his family, to ask his family to urge him to talk to us, so that he can clear his name, or maybe it will come out that he actually is a psychic and he actually does know where she is. Who knows? I don't know. I've contacted the police to the point of exhaustion, and I've tried my best to try and tell this tragic story that happened, 30 some odd years ago, based on a lot of old memories. So I feel like I've disappointed the family, you. It's really hard on the head because, as of right now, I'm out of information that I can use, and I haven't found Kim yet. When I started this adventure, I asked everyone to scream this docucast, if you will, from the mountaintops. Share, share, share. Because you never know when the littlest memory or the strangest thing is going to come to somebody, and you never know who's watching or who, a lot of people have hundreds of Facebook friends of people they don't truly know, and they have hundreds of Facebook friends, that kind of thing. So the more we share this podcast, the more chance we have of finding Kim Amero. The information flooding in right now is incredible, and there's been so many tips and so many ideas and so many theories that I feel like we're so close. I feel like something's going to break or something's going to give. And I just beg of you to keep sharing and keep that information pumping in our way, because it really is amazing. And I believe that as a community, we're going to find her. I mean, we have an audience in Australia. We have audiences in UK. We have the audiences in the States. We have a ton of audience members in Oshawa, Ontario, and Toronto, ironically, where all the sightings are. So you never know. You don't know. When we started this, we put a lot of theories to bed. We put the runaway theory to bed because I found it very hard to believe that someone would go that long. Someone would go 32 years, without contact with their siblings. I didn't buy that. Not saying that's not the case. I'm just saying that's not a theory that I buy or subscribe to. But again, you don't know. We talked about her death being an accident and, a group of people covering it up. But we don't have any leads to go down that road, and we don't have any information, and not one of the hundreds of messages even suggested it or tipped it or had a memory of it. Then we talked about Kim getting kidnapped, and that got put to bed because it's the middle of the X. Someone's going to see something. She's not going to go willingly. Whoever's car she got in that night, she went willingly for sure, because she would have kicked and she would have screamed and somebody would have seen something. So that left us with the theory that she went willingly with someone. Whether it was Michael Wayne McGray, who knows? Whether it was Randy, who knows? She went willingly. Here is the part where I break a promise to myself. Here is where I tell you my opinion, based on the hearsay, the facts, the stories, people's recollections, because right now, realistically, that's all we have to work with. The only tangible items we have that I haven't even seen or heard is the CD and the letter from Randy. That's the only real evidence that we have. But I'm going to tell you that I don't believe that Randy killed Kim Amero. Truly, I don't. I believe one of two ideas. I believe he was involved 100% heavily, but was it him that killed her? I don't think so. He obviously obsessed about it. And one of the theories I have is that it was due to severe paranoia. So he either sent the letters and CD to clear his conscience somehow, or to throw shade on the investigation, and she was never at those properties, maybe. Remember, he didn't want anyone to know his name. He didn't want the Michael Wayne McGray notoriety. He was giving this information to police anonymously. The reason why I wanted to talk to Randy, because I wanted to know why. He obsessed about this case as far back as his son can remember. He tried to trick his grandson, his 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 4 years grandson, into thinking that he was psychic and that Kim Amero was speaking through him and leading him to these locations. He had his grandson help draft a letter. He is obsessed with this case, and for what? He didn't want his name known. So for why? Why obsess? Why give these fake tips? One idea that came to me through a tipster, and it was an idea that I had all along as well, is maybe he is just mentally ill. Maybe he is just obsessed with this case. Maybe his mental illness, this psychic idea and all this stuff was his way of involving himself in something he was obsessed with. I don't know if you'd go so far as to involve your grandson in it. I don't know, but I'm not mentally ill. So I don't know. That could be a 32-year-old's obsession with something that he has no involvement in. Doesn't seem likely to me. Just doesn't. So I believe it was either to throw police off the trail, and she was never there. She was never at those properties. Or to clear his conscience by giving them her location. And, you know, if you think about it, in 2010, that property looked a lot different than it did in the 80s. So maybe he did give her location clearly of what it was back then, and maybe it looks different, and that's why they haven't found her. Or, you know, maybe he's working off old memories too. He's an old guy now, and so maybe he doesn't clearly remember. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to believe that you wouldn't remember exactly where you put a body, but when you get to a property and everything looks different, maybe you do. Maybe you do forget. I don't know. He's not talking. He's not talking to us. So Randy, if you are watching, please just tell us where she is. Create an anonymous email address or a fake email address and send us a message, or send the St. John Police a message with the geo coordinates or with a picture, something. Just tell us where she is, because I believe, and I believe most of you believe, that he knows exactly where she is. And if that's the case, you tried to tell the police where she was once before, and it didn't work. It didn't work. So now, why don't you try again? Don't give up. Tell us where she is, put your mind at ease, and give the Amero some peace. That's all I have to say to Randy. To you, dear audience, I beg of you, don't stop sending me your theories and ideas. Let's keep this going. You've helped this investigation more than you can possibly know. You've helped me come to so many conclusions. You've given validity and proof to Jane and Dylan's statements. You've given me a whole angle on this property owner who said that Randy was bringing heat to the property, so he had to go up there and kick them off the property. He burnt down his property, you know, the house and the cabin on his property. Randy in the letter said that it was burnt down to cover evidence. That could be true. This gentleman could be involved, this property owner, this deceased property owner could be just as involved as Randy. You never know, maybe he hurt Kim. I don't know. But Randy mentioning in his letter that it was burnt down to hide evidence is really outing the property owner, like unbelievably. But he was never investigated, because I believe the police all along, you know, maybe thought he was a loon bag, or maybe thought that this guy's obviously not a psychic, so why are we paying attention to anything he said? But maybe, just maybe, there's some validity to those comments. Maybe that is where she's buried. Maybe that is where they took her. And maybe that property owner is involved. Or not. As we sit here right now, we don't know. My team and I thought we'd be there by now. We thought by this time that we would have a more solid story to tell. Like, this is what happened. He took her from A to B and buried her in C, but we don't. So that's why you have to keep your ideas and thoughts and theories coming. And that's why we have to continue sharing it, because we're not there right now, but I feel like we're close. As of this episode, we have nothing new to share with you. Nothing that we haven't already said. You know, we are going to go back up to that property. We are going to revisit it. This is not us saying goodbye by any means. This isn't us stopping trying. This isn't us quitting, because you can't quit. So many people have given up on this case, and it's not fair. We're a community, and we can't leave Kim Amero behind. We're, you know, since moving to St. John, that's something I realize with every steak and stein and all the hands out that get filled. It's amazing. And I feel like this case felt unsolvable, so we didn't try. Amero's aside, because they've been trying for years and years and years and years. But I'm saying as a people, we stop trying, and every couple years they bring it back up, and every couple years it goes back into the newspaper, and there's no new leads, and there's no new stories, and it's just an active investigation. I feel like we can't do that this time around. We have to find her. And by sharing and by talking about it, talk about it at work, talk about it with your friends, talk about it with whoever you can. I feel like we're going to get there. I feel like we're really going to find her. Please take a second and follow our Facebook page or sign up for e-alerts when there's new episodes on our website, if you findingkimamero.com. All you do is put in your email and then you get an email every time there's an episode. Because as of right now, dear audience, I don't know when the next episode will be. We have run to the end of our investigation. We have gone down so many avenues that led nowhere. This has been a long time in the making. We've run into mountains that we can't climb over. We're running on zero police cooperation, zero Randy cooperation, and you, the audience, are the ones that have been guiding us, for 5 weeks now. You've been steering us in different directions, and we've been going down all these rabbit holes and coming back out with valid information. But as it sits right this very second, we have nothing. We have nothing else to share with you. So maybe we'll do another episode sharing with you some of the theories that other people have, some of the feedback that we've gotten, some of the tips that we've gotten. I don't know. But just in case I don't see you for a while, I'm going to thank you right now. I'm going to thank the Amero family. I'm going to thank Jane and Dylan. I'm going to thank those cowboys and the lovely ladies and the couple of lifers on the peninsula I was able to speak with. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Please keep sharing. I think together we can bring Kim home. And I think we're pretty close to getting there. So for, maybe a while, this is Jamie Splood. Thank you for watching Finding Kim Amero, Chapter 5. This can't be the end. And hopefully there will be a next time. And hopefully we'll get some more information. And maybe we'll get some usable tips. And maybe there'll be another episode. But this has been an incredible journey. And I am shocked at the views. I am shocked at the feedback. And I think this is the way to do it. I think sharing this over and over and over again is the way to get it out there, because the Ameros deserve their peace, and we can't leave them behind. Thank you. I wanna see what's before